is the Shabbat preceding Pesach, which is known in the Jewish world as Shabbat Hagadol, because it is a special Shabbat, as we're told about, as we read this morning in in Shemot, Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. Yahweh spoke to Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt and said, You are to begin your calendar with this month. This is to be the first month of the year for you. On the 10th day of the month, each man is to take a lamb or a kid for his family, one per household. Your lamb must be without defect, a male in his first year, and you may choose it from either the sheep or the goats. Now the animals were examined over the days between the 10th and the 14th days of Aviv, to ensure that they were without defect. So also Yeshua was challenged during those same days between the 10th and the 14th days of Aviv in 30 CE. So this morning I want to consider just how closely these events between what happened in Pesach, leading up to Pesach in 30 CE, match with the events that were taking place before that first Pesach in Egypt. A journey back in time. I invite you to come with me and travel back to the year 30 CE. However, before we actually begin that journey, we need to consider the complexities surrounding the calendars used in both ancient times and even in this present day. In 30 CE, the Romans, who held authority as the overlords, along with the Judean Authorities, who were responsible for the civil matters of Yehuda, both relied on the Julian calendar. By contrast, the Jewish community and the temple administration used the Aviv calendar. And in the same way as Talmidim of Yeshua today, we continue using that same calendar to determine when the scriptural dates will apply. Now, in the 21st century, a third calendar, the Gregorian calendar, is the predominant one, which introduces a further complication when trying to establish the timing of the scriptural Moedim, or the appointed times of Yahweh. The cycles of time and calendar alignments. There is yet another layer of complexity, which is the cycles of time. As each year comprises 365 and a quarter days, events that occur on a specific date often fall on a different week of the year, because, as I explained in my book, Calendar Chaos, during the Levitical era, between the time they went into the land until the destruction of the first temple, the calendar was stable. And right through that period, the 10th day of Aviv always fell on a Shabbat. What Yahweh told Moshe in Egypt was a perfect match of what Yeshua experienced in the week leading up to his death. It wasn't a coincidence. It was truly God's hand. However, this year we are observing Pesach on Friday the 3rd of April at 6 p.m., which is the beginning of the 15th day of Aviv. The idea of the day beginning at sundown, or around 6 p.m., can be confusing for many people in this modern Gentile world. Hence, the 10 days that we will be considering in our journey will be based on the Aviv calendar, which also matched the Julian calendar, both in date and day of the week in that particular year. Our journey starts on Friday the 31st of March, shortly after dawn on the 9th of Aviv. Yeshua foretells what the week ahead holds for him. Yeshua gathered his 12 emissaries together while they were still in Jericho and spoke about the fate of what lay ahead of him. He told them quite clearly that there was a great trial ahead, and you're going to see the Son of Man handed over to the head Kohanim and the Torah-teachers. They will sentence him to death, and turn him over to the Goyim, who will jeer at him, beat him, and execute him on a stake as a criminal. But on the third day, the Son of Man will rise. Despite his words, none of the emissaries really understood what he was saying, or even the significance of what he was about. They still believed that Yeshua would lead a rebellion against the Roman rule and restore self-governance to the people of Yehuda. Convinced that Yeshua was going to become their king, Yaakov and Yochanan, along with their mother, approached him privately. Their mother sought special favors, asking, "Promise me that when you become king, these two sons of mine will sit, one on the right and one on the left of you." So Yeshua replied to them, "You people don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup that I am about to drink?" However, they responded, "Yes, we can," which revealed their lack of understanding. Yeshua continued, "If you will drink that cup, but to sit on the right or left is not mine to give. It is for those whom the Father has prepared it." So in those words, Yeshua illustrated that he was not the one who'd actually decided who was to be chosen as Kohanim. And it still applies even today, that it's the Father's decision, not Yeshua's. So the Gospel of Luke also notes that when Yeshua named the 12 emissaries, he went up into the hills and prayed all night before he made the announcement. So it was the Father who made the selection of who, among all his Talmidim, would become the emissaries. Whoever among you wants to be a leader must become your servant. Whoever wants to be first must be a slave. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. His words foreshadowed the actions that we will celebrate on Thursday evening with the washing of feet. As Yeshua and his followers were all ready to leave Jericho and start the journey up to Yerushalayim, a large crowd gathered around them because they were all on their way to Yerushalayim. They were drawn by the news that he was the actual anticipated Mashiach that all Israel was waiting for, who would overthrow the suppression of Rome. So the ascent to Beit Anya began. The journey which lay before them was a demanding climb from Jericho to Beit Anya. It is an ascent of over 1,100 meters, over a distance of about 36 kilometers of winding pathway. That led to the Mount of Olives. It would take them a good 9 hours. But as they approached Beit Anya, Yeshua said to two of his Talmidim, "Find a donkey and its colt to prepare for me to enter into the city the following day." Upon arrival in Beit Anya, Yeshua stayed at the home of Elazar, whom we read about earlier. He arrived at sundown. That's the beginning of the 10th day, which was the Shabbat. According to Yochanan's Gospel, Elazar and his sisters Martha and Miriam hosted a banquet for Yeshua, which of course served as their Erev Shabbat dinner. During that meal, Miriam anointed Yeshua with a costly spikenard oil, preparing him for what was to come. Now the oil's value was equivalent to a whole year's wages, indicating that the family were wealthy. But there was conflict among the emissaries. Yehuda from Kiryat, known also as Judas Iscariot, objected to the use of that valuable oil, suggesting that it could be sold and given to the poor. His motives were questionable, as it appeared he had been misappropriating some of the money from the benefactors. This incident highlights the ongoing tension among Yeshua's emissaries and the other Talmidim. Yeshua defended Miriam, saying Leave her alone. She kept this for the day of my burial. You always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." These words revealed that Miriam understood the impending death and the concept, which was still unknown and unclear to all the others. At the banquet, there were many Judeans who'd been drawn not only by Yeshua's presence, but also that of Eleazar, the one who'd been raised from death. The head Cohen had previously decided to eliminate both Yeshua and Eleazar. Neither of them had committed a crime worthy of death. Eleazar, also known, of course, more commonly as Lazarus, was a close friend of Yeshua, and his home served as a place of refuge when Yeshua was visiting Yerushalayim. On the Shabbat morning of the 10th of Aviv, Yeshua rode into the city on the donkey, fulfilling the prophecy found in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. His entry was not only significant because of that prophecy, but also because of the unique path he took. It's known as the path of the Kohanim. Now, this is not well portrayed in the Gospels, but the path of the Kohanim leads to the east gate. Yeshua entered Yerushalayim through that east gate, later referred to, of course, as the Golden Gate. The route he chose was exceptional because during the Second Temple period, there was a viaduct across the Kidron Valley between the East Gate and the Mount of Olives, and was only ever used by the Kohanim. They would take that path which led, when they led the live goat out to Azazel in the wilderness each Yom Kippur. The viaduct was also used when they went out to burn the ashes of the red heifer. The Kohen responsible for that sacrifice would have to had a direct line of sight to the Kohen Gadol, who was standing at the entrance to the temple. Never before had anyone in any time in history who was not a selected Kohen traversed that path to the east gate, let alone ride on a donkey. From there, one can see, looking across the Kidron Valley, bearing in mind there's no viaduct there now, there is a straight line to where the curtain at the entrance to the temple would have been seen. Even today, at the top of the hill where that viaduct would have started, heading towards the east gate, there is on a wall a plaque which says, "Path of the Kohanim." That's the only reference to it. Entry and the people's response. As Yeshua rode over that viaduct towards the east gate, his followers welcomed him with palm branches and their cloaks, spreading them on the road as he passed. All that took place on the 10th day of Aviv. As Yeshua approached the east gate, the crowds laid their palms and their garments before him, shouting, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh, King of Israel." Some of the Perishim, Pharisees, objected and called out, "Rabbi, reprimand your Talmidim." Yeshua responded to them, "I tell you, if they keep quiet, even the stones will shout out." Such was the scene as Yeshua approached that east gate. But Yeshua expressed deep anxiety. While all this adulation was going on, Yeshua himself, while riding on that donkey, had a tremendous personal turmoil. As Yeshua entered the east gate, he was troubled by the knowledge of what lay ahead. The Gospel of John, chapter 12, verses 27 to 33, describes the deep emotions Yeshua was experiencing as he entered the city. "Now I am in turmoil. What can I say? Father, save me from this hour. I will say this, Father, glorify your name. At that, a bat coal came out of heaven. I have glorified it before, and I will glorify it again. The crowd, hearing that, said it had thundered. Others said an angel had spoken to him. Yeshua said, this bat coal did not come for my sake, but for yours. Now at this time, the world is to be judged. Now the ruler of the world is to be expelled. As for me, when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw everyone to myself. He said this in indication of the type of death he would die. Yeshua also reflected on the future of the city and its temple, as he wept, saying, if only you knew today, what is needed is shalom, but for now, it is hidden from your sight. For the days are coming upon you, speaking of the city, when your enemies will set a barricade around you, encircle you, hem you in on every side, and dash you to the ground, you and your children within your walls, leaving not a stone standing upon another. And all this because you did not recognize the opportunity when God offered it. With those words, Yeshua was reflecting on the words of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 24, where Gabriel said, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and for your holy city, for putting an end to transgression, for making an end to sin, for forgiving iniquity, and bringing everlasting justice, and setting the seal on vision and prophet, and anointing the especially holy place. So we see Yeshua was reflecting forward 40 years to the very day when the whole of Jerusalem, including the temple, was totally destroyed by the Romans. It is important to note that while Yeshua was actually entering through the east gate, the rest of the pilgrims were entering through the south gate. Archaeological excavations have revealed that the pool of Siloam was the starting point. During the Second Temple era, all those who wished to attend the inner court of the temple with their offerings were required to go through the mikveh, the ritual immersion in the pool of Siloam, also known as the lower pool. Only then were they cleansed to the degree where they were permitted to begin the ascent all the way up through the city of David to the triple gate on the south side of the Temple Mount. That was the procedure that was conducted by everyone who came to the 3 festivals a year. On the opposite side of the Temple Mount, the Paschal lambs, as we read about in Exodus, were being taken through the sheep gate on the northern side. There, they were observed for the next 4 days in preparation for the observance of Pesach. That same day, after Yeshua had actually entered through the east gate, Mark's Gospel says that he went into the temple courts and took a good look around at everything. But since it was late, he went off with the 12 back to Beit Anya. Now, it's highly unlikely that he would have gone back over that viaduct in which he rode in the morning. He would have gone out through the sheep gate, the north entrance, which leads round across the Kidron Valley, up the Mount of Olives, towards Beit Anya. That brings us to days 3 and 4, where he returns to the temple court. On Sunday, the 11th of Aviv, Yeshua and the 12 returned to the temple court. Although the text does not specify, it is likely he also entered that time through the sheep gate on the north side, as it was the most direct route from Beit Anya, and having already entered through the east gate the previous day, it's highly unlikely he would repeat the process. While he was walking towards the city, the Gospel of Yirmeyahu describes how Yeshua was hungry, and he found a fig tree, but when he approached it, It only had leaves, no fruit. Yeshua said to the tree, "May you never again bear fruit." Immediately, the fig tree dried up. Now, Middle Eastern fig trees produce an early crop that ripens in spring, just at the time he would have been there. Yeshua was rightly expecting to find fruit. When he found none, he expressed his frustration and condemnation of the tree, demonstrating that he had power over both plants as well as human life. The Talmidim saw and were amazed at what he'd done, how the fig tree had dried up almost instantaneously. So they quickly said to him, "What has happened? What did you do?" Yeshua replied, "Yes, I tell you, if you have trust and don't doubt, you will not only do this, what I have done to the fig tree, but even more. If you say to a mountain, 'Go and throw yourself into the sea,' it will be done." In other words, you will receive everything you ask for in prayer, no matter what it is, provided you trust. And provided, of course, it's in accordance with the Torah of Yahweh. Continuing into the city, Yeshua found the merchants and money changers operating in the temple courts. He overturned their tables and caused disruption among the traders. Yirmeyahu records how Yeshua, when entering the temple grounds, drove them out, those who were conducting business, including the merchants and their customers. He upset the desks of the money changers, knocked over the tables, the benches of the people selling pigeons. He told them, "It has been written, 'My house will be called a house of prayer,' but you are making it a den of robbers." Even though that temple was built by Herod the Great, who was an arch enemy of Yeshua himself, he still considered that place as a house of prayer. So we see he was being righteously indignatious against those people. The trading was common practice, especially during the 3 annual festivals. After all, people came from all over the diaspora. And according to Deuteronomy chapter 14, Moshe instructed the people to convert their produce into money if the distance was great from where they lived to Yerushalayim, and then exchange their money for offerings at the place chosen by Yahweh, which of course during the Second Temple era was Yerushalayim. Now that instruction was being fulfilled by the merchants, but instead of being outside the sheep gate where they should have been, they were right there in the courtyard of the temple. And this is the second time that Yeshua had berated them. A year earlier, Yeshua had overturned those same tables and expelled the same merchants from the temple courts at the time of Pesach 29 CE. On that previous occasion, the Judean authorities questioned him, asking, "What miraculous sign can you show to prove that you have the right to do these things?" Yeshua answered, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up again." The Judeans replied, "It took 46 years to build this temple, and you're going to raise it in 3 days?" It was clear that Yeshua was speaking about the literal Second Temple, because it stood there for a further 40 years after his death. After overturning the tables and driving out the merchants from the temple a second time, Yirmeyahu notes the whole city was stirred. "Who is this?" they asked. And the crowd answered, "This is Yeshua, the prophet from Nazareth in the Galilee." Over the course of those 3 days, the Sunday, the Monday, and Tuesday, Yeshua faced persistent challenges from the leading Kohanim and the Torah-teachers. These religious leaders questioned him on diverse matters concerning the Tanakh, seeking to test his understanding and interpretation of the scriptures. Their interrogation was focused not only on the content of his teaching, but also on the legitimacy of his shmichtah, which is his ordination, and his authority to act as he did. Despite of their relentless inquiries, Yeshua responded to each challenge, demonstrating that the depth of his wisdom and his legality for his mission was way beyond what they could comprehend. The period of examination that Yeshua endured mirrored the ritual scrutiny of the Paschal Lamb, which we read about in Exodus chapter 12. Just as the chosen lamb was carefully inspected for spot or blemish after being brought into the temple precincts on Shabbat Hagadol, so also Yeshua was being subjected to the rigorous evaluation. He was tested to ensure that he was without defect, without fault, and fit to be the role of the sacrificial lamb of Pesach, thus fulfilling his destiny as the Lamb of God. After engaging with the authorities in the temple court each day, Yeshua withdrew from the city and returned to Beit Anya, where, of course, he stayed with Eleazar, Martha, and Miriam in their home. They provided Yeshua with a place of rest and fellowship amidst the intense scrutiny and challenges that marked those final days. That brings us to the fifth day, the preparation for Pesach. Tuesday, the 13th day of Aviv. On that day, it appears Yeshua did not visit the temple court. None of the Gospels indicate his whereabouts during that day. It is likely he remained in the house of Eleazar, spending his time in deep prayer and anticipation of the events that would occur. Next day, the 14th day, would be the climax of all that had transpired since his ministry began 12 months earlier. The 13th day of Aviv was the preparation day for Pesach. The Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all recount how Yeshua instructed his Talmidim to prepare for his final meal. Each Gospel presents an account which is strikingly similar in wording. Since all three accounts are so similar, it is a reason to refer to them as Synoptic Gospels, meaning similarity. That term indicates that they are sharing the same perspective regarding the events. Collectively, they present a reasonably uniform voice. However, it is important to note the command given to Moshe by Yahweh in Shemot, Exodus chapter 12, verse 15. For 7 days you are to eat matzah. On the first day you are to remove all leaven from your houses. The Synoptic Gospels accounts are not describing the first day of matzah, but rather the preparation for the Pesach Seder. So let's look at Yeshua's last meal. In all three synoptic accounts, the preparation of Yeshua's final meal occurred during the daylight hours of the 13th day, with the meal itself actually taking place after sundown, which was the eve of the 14th day of Aviv, the Tuesday night. That marked the beginning of the day of Pesach. His last meal did not occur on the first day of matzah, as has been suggested by so many commentators. Despite what the Gospels suggest, that discrepancy appears to have arisen later when the narrative was actually edited and redacted before the release of the canonized Gospels in the mid-4th century. So moving on to day 6, Yeshua's last meal and the new covenant. When the time came, Yeshua and his emissaries reclined at the table. He said to them, I have wanted so much to eat this Seder with you before I die. For I tell you, certainly, I will not celebrate it again until it is given full meaning in the kingdom of God. Most English translations refer to Yeshua's final meal as being a Passover. Even David Stern in the CJB simply refers to it as an undefined Seder, which raises a question. Was it a Pesach Seder, or was it something else? The answer is simple. As Yeshua was the Paschal Lamb that year, his last meal could not be observed, could not be an observance of the event that had not yet happened. Therefore, it could not have been a Pesach Seder. The correct definition for the last meal remains uncertain. Now, there are at least two alternative explanations given. One explanation proposed that in recent years is that the first century Jews from the Galilee observed the fast of the firstborn. That fast began on the evening of the 13th day of Aviv and lasted until sundown of the 14th day, signalling the start of the Pesach Seder. As Yeshua was the firstborn male from the Galilee, he may have made his last meal on the 13th to be the last, to be his last supper, as most English translations in the canonized Gospels suggest. Yet there's another possibility, and a more likely one. The explanation is that Yeshua was celebrating a Jewish Se'udat Siyum, a celebratory meal held by a rabbi and his disciples following the completion of a period of study of the Torah and the prophets. As Yeshua had spent 12 months instructing his Talmidim about what lay ahead, it makes perfect sense that his last meal would have been a fulfillment of that traditional practice. Let's look at the new covenant. Returning to the events of that evening meal, Yirmeyahu recounts in chapter 26, while they were eating, Yeshua took a piece of matzah, made a bracha, and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." He also took the cup of wine, making a bracha, says, "All of you drink it, for this is my blood, which is ratifies the new covenant. My blood shed on behalf of many, so that they may have their sins forgiven. I tell you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine again until I drink it, the new wine in my Father's kingdom." Through those words, Yeshua inaugurated the new covenant. His own statement directly reflects the prophecy of Yirmeyahu or Jeremiah, which we read earlier. So we see all the things that have been spoken about were actually confirmed and fulfilled. He inaugurated the new covenant, and the same day, about 3 o'clock that afternoon, as the sacrificial lamb, he ratified that covenant by dying on the stake. 3 synoptic gospels present similar accounts concerning these events. However, Yochanan, John, does not mention the inauguration of the new covenant. Instead, he emphasizes Yeshua's washing of the feet of his Talmidim, which we looked at earlier. That action fulfilled what Moshe did for Aaron and his 4 sons when they entered the role of Kohanim. Right there at the Mishkan, when it was first built or first erected, on the first month of the 2nd year after they'd left Egypt, when it was inaugurated, the Kohanim, that is Aaron and his 4 sons, had to be prepared for their service. So it was Moshe's responsibility to wash them before they could enter into service. What Yeshua was doing on the night of his Se'udat Siyum was the same thing. He was inaugurating those 11 chosen Talmidim who were his emissaries to become his future Kohen, foundation of the future Kohanim. So in conclusion, reflecting on the journey, next Thursday evening we will come together to reenact Yeshua's Se'udat Siyum as 21st century Talmidim. The journey we have shared has hopefully provided everyone with a richer understanding of the significance of events that unfolded during those 6 days leading up to the night of Yeshua that when Yeshua changed the course of human history. So continuing the narrative, as we progress through the Haggadah, that is the telling or the narrative, during our reenactment of that special meal, then we will observe the next night, on Friday, the traditional Pesach Seder. Although this Devar has been entitled 10 Days That Changed the History Forever, our focus has only been on just the 6 days, culminating with Yeshua's Se'udat Siyum. But the story will continue, and we'll be looking at the events of the 14th day of Aviv, culminating with his ascension to his Father on the 18th of Aviv, which is Bikurim. These events will be explored in greater detail during our Shabbat service on the 11th of April. So, until Thursday evening, as always, Shabbat Shalom.